because the United States was so far ahead, free trade, let the businesses go anywhere, globalization, it was wonderful. They're bringing the most efficient production back home in the form of cheap commodities for us to fill our garages with. And the fantasy, which you can see on every MAGA hat, we're gonna go back and recover that. No one goes back. We all die. The world goes forward. It don't go backward. And the dream and the fantasy is very, very dangerous.
You want to see what real independent journalism funded by the people for the people looks like?
You ever heard a story like this in America?
You're looking at it.
Congratulations for always being somewhere where mainstream media is not.
Flint, Michigan.
See you in Nevada.
Thanks to people like you, we can get the truth. Corporate media, they've been lying to us for years, and you're going straight to the people.
You are the man. I'm glad you're here.
For as low as 16 cents a day, you'll keep us on the ground, covering the important stories the corporate media covers up. Hey, it's Jordan. I am excited to be joined by Professor Richard Wolff, economist, founder of Democracy at Work. And I'll tell you, as we see Trump stormtroopers all over the country, a rising cloud of, I believe, authoritarianism and fascism, there is not as much talk of the fact that the United States economy is or has fallen off a cliff, which might be linked or might be the reason for all this Trump distraction. I compiled this list because you don't really see this really reported as one in the corporate media. But if you look at this, it's just staggering how bad things are right now. A poll finds near majority of Americans say groceries harder to afford today than a year ago. Bottom 60% of U.S. households don't make enough money to afford a minimal quality of life. Hiring at its lowest level since 2009. Serious credit card delinquencies climbed to highest levels in 14 years. 1.2 million fewer jobs were created over the last 16 months than the government had reported. That's what we've been seeing as jobs reports are revised. Late rental payments skyrocketing. U.S. foreclosures up 14% in May. Homelessness hit a record high last year, up 18%. I mean, I could keep going, but surge of Americans living in RVs, recent graduate unemployment rising faster than all workers, beef prices up 17%. And I think this is key. U.S. billionaires reached a record-breaking $7.6 trillion in wealth as of September 2025, an increase of $4.7 trillion in the last 8 years. Yet we're told the biggest crisis in America is immigration. Your thoughts?
Yes, well, I know it's not cool to repeat about how I told you so, so I won't.
You can say
other than to say what I just said. Yeah, I think that what we're watching, to be real clear with people, beyond the constant substitution of bluster and bullying and BS, in order to, as you put it correctly, distract from all of the kinds of data you've looked at, leading many of us to wonder how long this can go on. In other words, how long can you substitute verbiage for reality, given that they're going in opposite directions? So with that in mind, let me try to give a context for what is going on. And I'll be brief, and then if you want, we can explore it. The United States, since at least the early part of the 20th century, in other words, the United States for most of the last century, 100 years, has operated a global empire. It's the empire that replaced the British Empire, of which the United States was once a small part, until we had a revolution that and a war, two wars, 1776, 1812. We won both. The British lost both of them, And after that, we were on our own. We declared that the deal with the British, so we don't have another war, would be that the British Empire could save itself as best it could in the rest of the world, and the United States took over the Western Hemisphere, the so-called Monroe Doctrine, which comes right after the second of the two wars that Britain lost and the United States won. All right, so we've had a century. For the first part, 1920s to the end of World War II, the old empires were still strong enough that the United States could assert itself, but it had real competitors, and that shaped what it could do, and it slowed down the process of growth. After 1945, all other competitors of the United States, actual or potential, were destroyed. They had destroyed each other in World War II. Germany, Japan, Britain, France, Italy, you name it, they were all gone. One country emerged, the United States. Other than Pearl Harbor, no bombs fell on the United States, no factories were destroyed, no railroads were destroyed, and the percentage of its young people that were killed or wounded was way less than what had happened in all those other countries, including Russia, by the way. So the last period, the last 70 years of the 100, period roughly after 1945, were a period in which the United States occupied an absolutely unique position that anyone with a slight awareness of history would have known couldn't last. You were the only one left. The other countries wouldn't just lie there destroyed, they would rebuild. Indeed, the United States helped them rebuild with the Marshall Plan and with exporting all the equipment that they needed to rebuild their economies, the Japanese, the Western Europeans, and so on. And so people should have understood that eventually the dominant position of the United States, which lasted from 1945 to 1975, 30 years, charmed 30 years, when we had no budget problems, when we had impressive economic growth every year, pretty stable prices, a remarkable, we should have known that couldn't survive. But as people do, and here the United States isn't that different from others, it was awfully tempting to believe that this remarkable, unique period would last forever. And Americans indulged themselves in that idea. You had American exceptionalism. You had literally the idea among religious people that God must really like the United States better than other people because look at our standard of living, at our global reach. The American military built 750 bases around the world. No other country had ever done it. No other country has ever done it since either. We've maintained those things. The US dollar became the global currency, replacing the British pound. US goods were everywhere. US jeans became the pants everybody wore in the world. The ideology of private capitalism with minimal government laissez-faire became a kind of global doctrine. And because the United States was so far ahead, free trade, let the businesses go anywhere. Globalization, it was wonderful. American companies would go around the world, find the best place to produce it there, bring the most efficient production back home in the form of cheap commodities for us to fill our garages with. It was a heady time, and we will forever look back on it with a yearning and the fantasy, which you can see on every MAGA hat we're gonna go back and recover that. No one goes back. We all die. The world goes forward. It don't go backward. And the dream and the fantasy is very, very dangerous. By 1975, it was already over. The Germans and the Japanese had recovered. Americans kind of knew it when they saw all those VWs and all those Toyotas on the road. Where did they come from? And they were replacing the Fords and the Chevys who had dominated in the previous 30 to 40 years. It was over, but we didn't face it. We went off the gold standard, so the dollar became even more urgent in everybody's hands because you couldn't exchange it for gold anymore. You better have it and have enough of it to get through the ups and downs. And the American people began to notice something, that the struggles of the working class in this country, which had been quite successful in the 100 years before that, raising wages because the country was developing and there were enough profits to give the businesses the extra profits they want and still allow them to give 3-4% increase in real wages decade after decade. And Americans were enjoying all of that. And then in the 1970s, the American employer class, just a footnote, 3%, according to the US Census, 3% of Americans are employers. The rest of us aren't. Welcome, you and I, okay? That 3% looked around and said, my God, we are paying wages way beyond what the rest of the world has. Our working class loves it. We have been celebrating that we do that, but now we have competitors. And they don't have to do it, and they're wiping the floor with us. The Ford and the Chevy is not long for this world, which, in case you don't know, has been proven in the last 30 to 40 years, since that's a vanishing breed. Okay, here's then what we're going to do. We're going to substitute machines for high-priced workers, and we're going to substitute foreign jobs for domestic jobs. We're going to close Detroit. In 1970, Detroit had a population of 2 million people. Today, Detroit has a population of 700,000 people. You get it? Gone. And not gone because Detroit isn't nice. They're gone because there are no jobs for these people. Many of them went to Cleveland or St. Louis, and they experienced the loss of jobs yet again, which does a number on your head.
Right.
Starting in the 1970s, then, we ended the great period of the American empire, but we didn't know because it was hidden from us. And I mean that, not as a conspiracy, although a little of that was there too, but as a kind of refusal to face what was going on. How did we get through that process? We, first of all, because America's good at this, we built a wave of, if you pardon me, bullshit that should impress anyone historically looking back. It's called neoliberalism, or if you like, globalization, or if you're really crazy, multiculturalism. In other words, we glossed the movement of jobs overseas and the replacement of jobs here in the United States with automation as something wonderful, global, multicultural, to hide what it was, which was the decision of those in charge of American business that they could make more money somewhere else. We should have known, right? Capitalism began in New England, then it left, and New England hasn't been a center of industry ever since. It went to the Midwest for a while. You know what we call that now? The Rust Belt, because it's gone. Then it went to the South and the West, And then in the 70s, it left. It went to China and India and Brazil and places like that. We could have and we should have understood it, but we didn't. Instead, we got all excited about the money that was being made by producing in China and paying people a small fraction of what they got paid here. Of course, they went there. The Chinese did everything to entice them. The Chinese said, yeah, you can hire our cheap labor. Yeah, you can sell your products here in China. And remember, already then and even now, China's got 4 times the population of the United States. If that economy rises as it has, that's the greatest market in the world. And I've been a professor at business schools where I teach people like my colleagues that if you want to succeed as a business, you go where the wages are cheap and the market is growing. Friends, that ain't the US. The wages aren't low and the market is not growing. We have what's called a mature market. Last point, and then because I know this is provocative. Who are the people who lost their jobs in America? Well, the ones that the employer had the greatest incentive to replace with cheaper workers. The high-paid workers. And who were they? Here we go. White, male, Christian, unionized industrial manufacturing workers. They're the ones who lost the jobs. I mean, others too, but they were the ones, because these were the ones you were paying the big bucks to. These were the ones celebrating how America gives working class people a good salary, which in those days it did. They could keep their wives at home because they earned enough as males to have the wife at home with the children. All that's gone. And you know who that hurt the most? White, male, Christian industrial workers. And what is the support for Mr. Trump? White, male, Christian, former industrial workers. Of course they want MAGA. They want to go back. They want to recover, which they never will, what they had. They don't dare, because they're Americans, they don't dare blame the corporations who made the decisions to go, to abandon the United States. Oh, no. Mustn't do that, especially if you're a Republican. But even if you're a well-paid Democratic worker, which those people once were, you don't blame the corporation, because that's biting the hand you believe feeds you. So you need a scapegoat. Who do you blame? Well, whoever's available. How about poor immigrants? Let's blame them. Or how about blaming the Chinese? Or how about figure it out? Black people, brown people, women people. What difference does it make? You've got to blame someone. And there comes Mr. Trump. He sees what I've just described, although, of course, not in those terms. And he says, I can ride this into the White House. And he did.
Absolutely. You know, I think it's a lot worse than people realize. I mean, this was from Politico, of all places, after the election. I don't believe those who went into the past election taking pride in the unemployment numbers understood that the near record low unemployment figures, the figure was a mere 4.2% in November, counted homeless people doing occasional work as employed. But the implications are powerful. If you filter the statistic to include as unemployed people who can't find anything but part-time work, or who make a poverty wage, roughly 25,000, the percentage is actually 23.7%. In other words, nearly 1 of every 4 workers is functionally unemployed in America today. And that is not counting the AI apocalypse, which we'll get to later, AI replacing jobs.
Right.
I want to ask you, because in the past, when the economy was horrible, even though the media, kind of put lipstick on a pig and made it seem like it was better, at least there was kind of a backstop theoretically for Americans, Medicaid, unemployment, if you're seniors, Medicare, disability, things like that. But you now have an administration gutting Medicaid. You now have an administration, this current government shutdown, they're using it in practice to permanently gut the federal workforce and a lot of the people that keep those agencies and those backstops running. Basically, a lot of the very weak, thinning social safety net in America is going away. At the same time, more and more people are losing their jobs. I mean, that's a kind of scary picture, because what are people to do as they lose their jobs? There's no Medicaid. There's thinning Medicaid, thinning social safety net. What happens?
Well, I don't want to be misunderstood. I don't mean to be flippant, but we are part of what I said. We are a dying, declining empire. And that's what happens when empires decline. To say it in simple, summary terms, when the empire is over, when it's peaked and on its way down, as every empire in the history of the human race has shown us, Roman, Greek, Ottoman, Persian, African, Inca, Aztec, it doesn't matter. The people who sit at the top, whoever the people are who either own the wealth or have the dominant power position, are thereby best placed to hold on to theirs. Okay, then who bears the burden of the decline? Answer: everybody below them. That's what we're doing. I'm talking to you from the middle of Manhattan. I can assure you, restaurants charging $200 to $400 a person for dinner are thriving all around me. Is there wealth in America? You bet. Are they doing fine? You bet. They go to a show, which costs $200 or $300 a seat. Then they go to a restaurant that costs $200 or $400. Spending $1,000 for a couple for the evening is a normal event. They don't even buy the expensive wines at the restaurant to do it. A few blocks away, there are people who can't afford to live in their apartment anymore without taking in boarders because they can't cover the rent, even though husband and wife, parents, are full-time workers. In New York City, they get even paid decently, perhaps. So what we're watching is the government of the United States doing what governments in declining empires do, sticking it to the mass of people so that those at the top don't have to give up anything. We're having a race here in New York City. We have a remarkable event. A Muslim socialist is on top to likely win the mayoralty race in New York, the biggest city of the country. Why? Because his whole campaign is about the affordability or lack thereof for the city. And he's dwarfing the incumbent who just quit. He got no chance at all. A Republican who's got a chance equal to that of you and me, and we're not running. And that leaves Mr. Cuomo, who's got so many problems, he can't win. And so we're going to have a Muslim socialist talking about affordability. I got a message for America. That's not because New York City is odd. It's because these problems are producing the rage and anger of the white male Christian industrial workers who got savaged after the 1970s. But it's now spreading as the empire declines, and we're going to, and by the way, this has got very little to do with Mr. Trump. Mr. Biden was doing it too, not as fast. And the business community was getting scared. He wasn't doing it as fast. He still would never tax corporations and the rich, but he borrowed like crazy from them to pay for the slowing of the decline. Mr. Trump doesn't want to pay. So he's got to make the decline worse. He taxes everybody with his tariffs and then cuts the government that he's raising the tax money to fund at this. You have to ask yourself, what is this craziness? And I'm explaining it so you see it isn't crazy at all. It's the accommodation. We lost the war in Vietnam, right? The enemy there was the North Vietnamese Communist Party. You know who's in charge of Vietnam today? The North Vietnamese Communist Party. Then we fought in Afghanistan. Our enemy was the Taliban. Who's in charge of Afghanistan today? The Taliban. We went to war in Iraq. Did we overthrow Saddam Hussein? Yeah. Are the people that oppose us in charge there? Yeah. And what are we doing in Ukraine? We're losing. Hello, you can gather 300 generals and admirals in one place and give them a lecture on not getting fat, but you're not in a position anymore. China has caught up. The catching up of Europeans that I told you about in the 1970s is a picnic compared to the competition coming from China. They can compete not only on producing automobiles, et cetera, but high tech, the highest tech there is. They do it too, and they do it as well or better than we do. And that's the only industry we've got left. When Mr. Trump was inaugurated, what did you seeing behind him? All the high-tech billionaires. Besides the grotesque optics of what that said, that's what's left.
Right.
And that can't sustain 330 million people. That's our problem, not 10 or 12 million undocumented immigrants who are mostly very poor people. What kind of a nutty society goes after them when the real problems are staring them in the face everywhere else?
I'd like to also ask you, AI, which, there's a whole lot of money being poured into this and a whole lot of marketing and spin talking about how this is going to be the greatest new technology, since the Industrial Revolution. But you have a lot of, I think, sociopaths at the head of this AI boom. I want to play this clip. This is from Sam Altman of, OpenAI, who now just did a mega deal with NVIDIA. Let me just play this.
I still expect, although I don't know what, and this is over a long period of time. This is not a like next year or, the year after that kind of thing. But over a long period of time, I still expect that there will be some change required to the social contract, given how powerful we expect this technology to be. I'm not a believer that there won't be any jobs. I think we always find new things to do. But I do think like the whole structure of society itself will be up for some degree of debate and reconfiguration.
And who will be debating it is the question. I'll show you this also. This is from an AI executive of Anthropic who warns that we might have, 10 to 20% unemployment within the next 5 years. I would say that's probably an undercount and probably quicker than 5 years. Dario Amodei, CEO of Anthropic, AI could wipe out half of all entry-level white-collar jobs and spike unemployment to 10 to 20% in the next 1 to 5 years. I certainly don't want billionaires determining what should be the new social contract. And frankly, of course, what we're seeing from Trump is awful, but do we really expect a Democratic president to come in and tightly regulate AI as the tech companies pouring hundreds of billions of dollars into AI continue to buy them off? I hate to be a Debbie Downer, but can't this get a lot worse than what we're currently talking about now?
Absolutely, Ken. And it very well might. It's very clear that when the billionaires talk, it's clear what they're saying, that profit is their metric. If they can make a profit, they will buy a technology. The hype about all that it's going to do, let me remind you, that was the hype behind the dot-com craziness in the 1990s. I lived through it. I know exactly the same language. The internet is going to revolutionize and around on and on and on. And the people who said, yeah, but it could do away with a lot of jobs. Let me just take that number in your clip, 10% unemployment. Most of Europe has had 10% unemployment for most of the last 30 years. no one in America should think that that can't happen here. Of course it can happen here. The capitalist system periodically has crashes that give us 10% unemployment. That isn't new in the United States. At the depths of the Depression of the 1930s, unemployment was 25%, 1933. 1 in 4 workers out of work. So these people are talking about something they're in the process of bringing out. Let me put on my hat as a minute as an economics professor. A very little arithmetic exercise that shouldn't bother anybody. Let's assume there's an AI program, artificial intelligence. And if you bring it into a workplace, it allows each worker to do twice as much as he or she used to do with this AI working with them. Okay? What does the typical capitalist employer do? He turns to half of his workers and he says, "You're fired. Go away on Friday afternoon and don't ever come back." To the other half of his workers, he says, "I have this new piece of equipment. You're all going to be working with this. And otherwise, everything in our enterprise is exactly the same. We will produce the same amount of output with half of you and AI that we used to take double of you to do. That will produce the same output. We'll sell it at the same price. We'll make the same revenue. But when I take the revenue, I don't have to pay the salaries of half the workers because I fired them. And that money that used to go to them, I keep. That's my profit incentive. That's why I'm doing this. This is wonderful. I produce the same as before. My contribution to the economy is identical, but I make way more profit because I'm keeping the money I used to have to piss away on 50% of my workforce. All right? Keep that in mind. What would happen in a socialist economy? What would a worker co-op, if it ran the enterprise, do? Would they buy the AI? Absolutely. It makes every worker twice as productive. And here's what they would do. Everybody's workday would be cut from 8 hours to 4 hours. Why? Because in 4 hours, you can do as much as you used to take 8 hours for. That's what AI enables you to do. Everybody gets the same wage for half a day. Everything else is the same. The profit before, same now. Wow. You've used AI to transform the lives of the majority, the workers. They get half a day off every day. It is the greatest thing that could ever happen to them, to their personal life, to the relationships they have, to their families, if they want, to their hobbies, to their political engagement. Who knows? That would be a wonderful way to use AI, and it would cause no unemployment at all. We know exactly how to use AI, but if we stay with this capitalist system that we're enduring the decline of, then it'll kick us right in the teeth.
And you talk about a dying empire. Right or wrong, a lot of people's dignity is associated with their work, right? So if they, we've seen people after the 2008 financial crash, suicides, increase due to layoffs. Well, if you have this zombie economy where people are losing their jobs to the, great AI robot or whatever, I mean, not only can you have more despair, social isolation, but kind of seems to me like some of the violence and political violence we're seeing could escalate too.
Yeah. And it'll escalate. It'll keep escalating because if I could just make the point, what Mr. Trump is doing is theater, but it's not a policy. There's nothing there that's going to solve this problem. Let me give you a simple example here too. The tariffs. How does he justify the tariff? His answer, and his advisors, some of whom I know, this is their answer. Right now, everything, our toaster, our cars, unit are made overseas and brought here and sold to us. So the jobs of making them are over there, not here. If I charge people a tariff, if in other words, the price goes up because there's a tax, that's what a tariff is, and put aside that a Republican is taxing us crazy to big time, which they used to say they didn't believe in. Okay, so there's something extreme going on. Well, then the company will realize if it makes the toaster in China and brings it here, the tariff is going to apply. But if it changes and moves the toaster factory from Shanghai to Cincinnati, then it can produce and sell the toaster. No tariff is involved. So I am bringing jobs back to America. He's been saying that since day one. It's important that he says it because people keep asking, why are we having this problem? Why are the prices going up? Because, of course, the price contains the tariff that the importer has to pay. Okay, he's going to bring jobs here. Now, let me just go through like your list at the beginning of the program. Let me tell you why the jobs aren't coming back. No sign of it. Our government is shut down. You want to send a message to CEOs around the world why they shouldn't come to the United States? Shut down the government. Demonstrate that the two major parties can't get together to keep the garbage picked up each week by the Public Works Department. You don't move to a country like that. Here's another one. The troops are being sent into the large cities. Oh, goodness, don't go there. The working class is in an uproar. Don't go there. Prices are rising, which makes, of course, whatever you produce in America more expensive now and next year, and therefore harder to sell. Let me remind you, I'm an economist, so I know these statistics. The inflation rate in this country, officially, 3% right now. It's probably higher, but 3%. Our most important competitor in the world now, far and away, China. What is the inflation rate in China? Ready? Minus 0.4%. They don't have an inflation. They haven't had a significant inflation for all the recent years that we've been struggling with it. We're pricing ourselves out of the world market. China can keep selling because their prices are going down. America can't because it's you're not bringing anybody here. You're not going. There's no solution to Mr. Trump offers. Theater, bluster. Look, he promised he'd bring all the wars to an end. Again, endless wars. Has he solved Ukraine? Not a bit. Has he solved Gaza? Not a bit. Meanwhile, he's attacked Iran with more ominous talk coming, and he's beginning a war in Venezuela. I mean, what are you doing? This is very scary. You know why? Because when Hitler had his problems developing the German economy, he made a war, which finished him. Mussolini did that. The Japanese did that. Very classic. If you're a dying empire and you take power and you can't do diddly squat to stop it, well, you need ever bigger distractions. Beating up on poor immigrants may take you for a while, but you got to expand. He's doing that, bringing the military to save ICE from the hostility of the people it's abusing, and then fight wars literally in Latin America, in the Middle East, in Ukraine, in the Far East. Maybe he'll go to war with China over Taiwan. The United States can't do this. You know what that's all called? Overreach. That's why you lost in Vietnam and in Afghanistan and in Ukraine. You're watching out of control overreach. And I understand what I'm saying will not be picked up because it's overwhelmed by all the ideological noise that the Trump people put out. But look, I understand. It's my whole life of being an economist. There's always a few statistics that make things look up and a few that make them look down. And the trick of anybody who isn't a huckster is to look at them and come up with a balanced diagnosis. It's like a doctor. There's always things in your body that point to good health. But there are always things in your body that are warning signs of things that could go. The job of the doctor is not to look at one or the other. The job of a decent doctor is to weigh them and tell you why she or he think on balance you're okay, or you have to do this or that to make yourself okay. I look at the American economy and I'm telling you, the negatives at this point are overwhelming. And the positives, the few that they point to, that we have a Silicon Valley. Yes, we do. And it's what sustains American capitalism at this point, because it has nothing else. But it is sustaining it with the threat of AI, which will be particularly effective on that, and with the competition of the Chinese, who have already demonstrated point for point, chip for chip, that they can match or exceed what we do. A few weeks ago, I was in Paris. All over Paris, I saw taxi cabs with the initials on their fender, BYD, the BYD Corporation. And, you know, I'm an American kid. I've been interested in cars all my life. I wanted to know what is this car? Is this a French car? No. I did my research. BYD stands for Build Your Dream, English words. It's a Chinese automobile company. It produces electric cars and trucks. And then I discovered by reading automotive magazines that the BYD car and truck is the best quality, cheapest price electric vehicle now produced on this planet, which is why the cabs in Paris buy those cars. They're always looking for the cheapest, best car, and they have a big deal on not polluting, so they're not doing like we are, going backwards into fossil fuels. They're looking for, as the whole world basically is doing. Okay, that competition is over. Tesla isn't the winner. BYD is the winner. By the way, BYD sells more cars in China now than Tesla does, and Tesla has made a big effort in China. So, I mean, I'm looking at all of this. I do it every day. And I say to myself, I should paragraph full transparency. My wife is a psychotherapist, and her way of describing this is denial. You know, it's like when your boyfriend or your girlfriend no longer feels the way that person once did towards you. It's very hard to face that. And one of the things human beings do is deny it until your best friend, you know, tells you what is obvious to everybody but you. We're in that. We are a nation in cultivated, well-rehearsed denial. And the people we elect are specialists in spewing denial back at us because they rightly perceive that that's what we want to hear. We vote them in to keep that make-believe going. But in the end, ruin is down that alley really bad.
Last question. You know, I think the human reaction when the house is on fire is just put it out. And I think there's a lot of people out right now protesting Trump, ICE, you know, rising fascism, that their mindset is we're just going to vote our way out of this, put the Democrats back in there. And I'm not telling people how to vote. And I agree with the sentiment. You know, I would like to get rid of Trump and MAGA as quickly as possible. But I think the genie's kind of out of the battle. I mean, just because you get rid of Trump doesn't mean you get rid of this. You What would you say? Because we're seeing a Democratic Party now that the leadership basically will not endorse the kind of sort of socialist in New York City. I don't even know if he's an actual socialist, proposing things that are kind of commonplace in most of Europe. Their opposition to Trump is not to propose anything, a bold alternative, but just to try and save Obamacare subsidies. Right. I'm not trying to, call a spade. I would say the Republicans are far worse at this point. But with that said, I don't think kind of getting back to, cozy, comfortable neoliberalism is the answer either. What would you say to all the people out there who think the answer is just we got to get the Democrats back in there?
Frankly, I'm disgusted. Watching the inaction of Hakeem Jeffries, the senator from New York. It's beyond awful. It's Me Tooism. Even I'm beginning to hear nasty things said about immigrants. It's so cheap. It's so crude. What are you doing? This is no leadership. You could go to the working class and you could tell the story I did and point out to them, your complaints and your bitterness are understandable. We feel for you. The way Trump tells them, I feel for you. I'm your revenge. We're going to be your revenge too. But unlike Trump, we don't offer you theater. Here's a reality. And let me give you an example of where parties not that different from the Democratic Party are behaving differently. I'm going to give you a French example. I'm going to give you an Italian example. And I could give you others. But the French people have gone out into the street. Now, I understand French history and French culture cultivates that, has been doing it for centuries, to their everlasting credit. When they say democracy, they mean the people let you know where they are, what they want, what they feel. Okay, as the empire declines there, and theirs has been declining longer than ours has, the French, like the British, they're doing the same thing, preserving everything for the rich and the powerful and kicking down, suck up, kick down. So the government comes along, Mr. Macron, who's less popular in France than Mr. Trump is here, which is telling you something, right? He proposes, among other things, just to give you an idea, that there are 2 national holidays in France that people have off. Nobody works, like Christmas or that kind of thing. And he wants to take them back. That's his proposal. 2 holidays. Everybody will have to go to work. No change in pay. Takes your breath away. What? Yes, you're going to make more profit for your employer 2 days a week. He gets you free. And they wonder that people go out in the street and they say, no, not going to happen. They overthrew his government, his prime minister that he named on the 10th of September. They had another demonstration all over France, 500,000 people on the 18th of September, and they had another one yesterday on the 2nd of October. Okay, so this is how.
And by the way, in Italy today,
yep.
You have thousands and 100 cities,
right?
And this is just for Gaza, for the Palestinians.
I was about to say, not only do the Italians do the French one better, but they didn't even do it just for themselves. They wanted to make it clear, yeah, we're going out on strike, general strike across Italy, because we hate this government and we want this and we don't want that. But also we feel deeply about another issue, not a bread and butter for us, but another issue that is morally important for us, that there's something going on in Gaza. Whatever you think about the Israeli-Palestine struggle, that is out of order, unacceptable, immoral, whatever kind of word like that you want. And we feel that it's important for the working class here. So the dock workers say, we won't load ships that do business with Israel, and we call on our fellow workers to have and they do. And what does the American Democratic Party do? Nothing. Where's the demonstration? Where are you calling people out? You know, the anti-King movement here isn't the labor movement. It's not even clear the labor movement will join. And if it is, it'll be bits and pieces of it that join, but not the apparatus that it has. And the Democrats seem committed to thinking that they can get in by running next year and the 2 years later by saying, we're not as bad as the Republicans. And that will do it for them. And that allows them to do basically the same thing, but not as fast and not as ugly and not as grossly as the Republicans. Because they have no where's the proposals for them to solve these problems? They don't have any. And the Republicans are right to make fun of them. They want to keep spending the money. Yeah, but there is no money. I want to remind people, in the 1970s, the debt of the United States was calculated in a few $100 billion. Today, the debt of the United States is $37 trillion. That's a faster rise than prices, than jobs, than anything. The number one support of this economy is debt. We are a debt-ridden economy. It's so bad that when the government now goes to corporations and the rich to borrow from them, the corporations and the rich are telling them, Democrats and Republicans alike, we're no longer willing to lend to you because it's too risky. You are in such trouble that you may hit a wall soon and tell us you can't pay us back. We're not lending you any money. The United States used to have a AAA rating as a country. There are countries that do have it right now. We don't. All three rating agencies, Standard & Poor, Fitch's, and I forget the third one, they have all dropped the rating to AA. I mean, what do you want? That's part of why Mr. Trump is raising taxes on us, because he can't borrow the way he used to. The Democrats say, oh, terrible, you're not spending money. That's not an answer, because if you do spend the way the Democrats want, they're going to discover that they can't borrow the money. And then they'll use that as an excuse why they can't sustain the country's social program. Why? Because Democrats and Republicans have both been captured by their donors. They cannot bite the hands that feed them the money without which they cannot operate their political activities. That means we are at a point where the reform and the adjustment and the hoping that things get better, we're beyond that now. You know, it's like the Americans, and I know where I'm taking this, so you can smile with me. It's like the United States in the years before 1776. You try this, you try that. You appeal to George III to behave differently. He looks at you as if you're crazy. He reminds you that you're a small, unimportant corner of the empire, and he's King George III of the British Empire. He does it over and over again until you can't stand it anymore. And then we're getting close. And the civil conflict you see in this country is really a conflict between those who want drastic change via Trump, but don't know what it means or where that goes, and those who don't want Trump, but also have no solution either, and are being spoken to by a Democratic Party which says we're just not as bad as them. Our people need and want more than that, and they're working their way to understand it. And I tell you, whatever Mr. Mamdani is here in New York, if he wins, which all the polls suggest now he will, if he wins, at the defeat of a centrist Democrat just like Biden, that is Mr. Cuomo. And if Mr. Trump impedes him taking over, which Trump has said he would do, that could easily be the spark from which there is no return.
And one more, because I know I'm going to get a lot of, all right, this is great. You've diagnosed it. What's the solution? Is there a solution to this mess? Or are we?
Yes.
Are we...
Yes. And the answer to that solution is to question the economic system we have. And I don't want, so I used to be shut up at this point by someone responding to what I just said by saying, well, that's not realistic. My answer to you is real simple if that's in your mind. What is realistic? More of Mr. Trump? Replace him with Mr. Hakeem Jeffries? I mean, come on. There's no solution there. When I say this, here's what I mean. We make decisions based on profit. You get a job in this country if it's profitable for someone to hire you. What an interesting idea. Your job is held hostage to somebody else's calculation about whether it's profitable or not. Why are we doing that? The people who make the profit calculation, the employer class, 3%. We're the 97. What are we doing? Why is our job as crucial to us? I'll quote you right back to you, Chariton, right? Your self-esteem, your sense of yourself is wrapped up with the work you do, the contribution you make to the community of which you are a part. Why are we allowing the jobs we perform, the contributions we make, we, the 97%, are held hostage to the profit calculations of 3%? That's not only not democratic, it's like a monarchy. It's like we all got a job if the king is so inclined. Well, we got rid of kings, except they fooled us. They changed their name, came inside the business, and called themselves a CEO. We have that is what has to be questioned. And if we don't question that, if we don't rearrange, then we will live in the failed performance of this system.
Thank you, sir. Richard Wolff, economist, professor, founder Democracy at Work, which is a great YouTube channel. Let's keep in touch before the empire dies.
Absolutely. And if you want to get together again, just get in touch. I really enjoyed talking with you.
All right. Be well.
Bye-bye.